is up, guys? What is up? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Shout out to Ninja Nuts and let's see. YVNG. I don't even know how I would pronounce that phonetically, but let's just say C Money. What's good, man? What's good? Don't know about Smothered, but I'm happy with the progress. Now, when I look at Smothered, in this case, Ninja Nuts, regarding the title, I tend to look at the whole of the game. The Cowboys controlled the game, and save for the last 10 cheap points they gave up, this really did to me feel like the Dallas defense smothered the Giants. For instance, the Giants had 255 total yards in the game. 108 yards came in those last two drives that really were kind of garbage time in themselves. So the score looked close, but the Dallas defense did smother the Giants offense for most of the night. Shout out to Honcho Sacramento Cowboy. What's up? It looks like it might just be me rolling solo tonight, guys. I know normally this is a roundtable type discussion, but it looks like tonight, due to some scheduling conflicts and some technical issues, we might just be looking at just me. So make do with it as we can. I'll still cover the talking points I wanted to. Another thing I wanted to point out, if you guys are interested, check out my second article for Dallas Sports Fanatic that went up today. You can find that on DallasSportsFanatic.com or TheDallasProspect.com now. I don't think this one got onto Bleacher Report like my previous one did, but all the same, it's out there if you want to read it. And it's all about the Cowboys defense and their continued progress and how they've really just impressed through 2 games so far. See, Ninja Nuts, Saquon and Odell were kept in check for sure. Absolutely. I mean, Odell Beckham had 9 targets, only 4 catches, and 51 yards. 17, his longest reception of the game, a 17-yarder, came on one of those last 2 drives. So the Dallas secondary kept him in check. That's Byron Jones, that's Chidobe Awuzie. They kept Odell Beckham in check, and it was really impressive what they were able to do. Now, part of that is assisted by the fact that the Giants' offensive line is trash, and that's what I was saying going into the game. If you tuned in, last Thursday when we previewed this game, when I was talking with Law and James and Computer, when we previewed this game, I was talking about how the offensive line for the Giants is just bad. I know they've tried to improve it, but it's not a good offensive line, and Dallas proved that. Dallas gets 6 sacks on the game. 6 different players get those sacks, which means technically I am supposed to eat some kind of crow because I predicted 2.5 sacks for DeMarcus Lawrence. So I don't have any prop or anything to really pantomime this, but I'll say this. I was wrong that DeMarcus Lawrence would get 2.5 sacks. Turns out Dallas still ate plenty, getting 6 sacks, 6 different players, and creating a turnover for the defense. You get the Damian Wilson sack strip fumble, which Taco Charlton recovers at the, I want to say, Giants 25, and that leads to another 27-yard field goal from Brett Maher, and that pretty much gave Dallas some security. So before I put the cart too far before the horse, let me talk about the game as a whole, and let's just see. Shout out Stevie Mac 23, what's up? This is Justin. Eli Manning said that he plans on wearing adult diapers the next time he goes against the Hot Boys. Man, he looked like he needed them. Did you guys? I know if you guys follow the Dallas Prospect Facebook page, I put out at least a couple different memes of it. The original template, and then once I put like the meme caption with it, talking about how just because you draft Saquon Barkley doesn't mean that you have an offensive line suddenly. Offensive line not included, I think is what I said. That was absolutely it. Eli Manning looked like he saw a ghost after that 3rd sack. And I want to say that was down in like inside the Dallas 10. That's not the Jalen Smith just laying the wood to Eli who scrambled. I think that was a couple plays before maybe. But regardless, Dallas's defense, man, they look good. They've given up an average of 14.5 points through 2 weeks. Now, granted, I would argue the Panthers put up 24. They lost 31-24. They put up 24 this week against Atlanta, which is not a bad team by any regard. But I do have some questions about that team in terms of its all-around offensive production. It feels like that's very dependent on Cam and on Christian McCaffrey. And then you pivoted this week, and holy crap, without Saquon Barkley, how bad would the Giants be? Like, seriously, I know they have Odell Beckham, now the highest paid receiver in the league, and they have Sterling Shepard, who I think is a very good receiver, a good slot receiver. But man, oh man, that offensive line is trash. They don't have a whole lot of help outside of that. Saquon Barkley gets 14 receptions, I want to say, for 80 yards. So really good in that regard, but 14 catches for 80 yards, that's 5.7 a pop. That's nothing to write home about. So even though the dude broke tackles, no first tackler ever brought him down that I noticed. Maybe once. But the dude is definitely a beast, and there's no debating that. There's no debate in that regard. So they're going to have to figure out what to do about him in the future, but their offensive line is so bad, they only ran him between the tackles 11 times for 28 yards. Meanwhile, New York as a team ran for 35 yards. Like, holy crap. You want to talk about inflating the numbers for the Dallas defense, man. That's how you do it, right there. Let's see. Charles Edwards, what's up? I still don't see what everyone else sees in... Oh, Saquon. If Saquon was on Dallas, like 2016 Dallas, I think you would look at Saquon as pound for pound similar to Zeke. I don't know that he's better necessarily. I know he has more physical tools. He's a little bit more like an Adrian Peterson than Zeke is, but he's on such a bad team, it's going to be hard for him to show out. And even last week, what's up, Gle? Even last week, when he pops that 65-yarder late in the game against Jacksonville, that kind of inflates his numbers. But I don't think you're going to see huge numbers out of him this year, and that's why I feel like everyone who made such a raving thing about, oh, he's going to be the next Zeke, maybe in the long term of it, but by no means is he going to have a rookie campaign like Zeke. Zeke came into the best offensive line in the league with, at the time, when he came in, the belief was going to be he was going to play with Romo. So it was supposed to be like the best of both worlds, the absolute perfect situation for him. And he still had a very good situation. The 2016 Cowboys were very good, even offensively. And that is the one area that continues to kind of plague this team. Let's see here. Make sure I'm hitting all the gist of this comments here. I thought Tank would have a much bigger night, but as a whole, Dallas D looking legit. Yeah, I heard Collinsworth make some mention at one point that DeMarcus Lawrence was battling a groin injury. I hadn't heard anything about it before or since. So I don't know if he just got his little factoid confused with someone else or what. But I will say this. New York threw a lot of extra help Eric Flowers' way, and they had to. A couple of those times in the first half, yeah, Eric Flowers, he actually went toe-to-toe with D-Law, and because so much of what New York was doing was just quick dump downs, they were able to protect him fairly well in that regard. But at the same time, they had to throw a lot of help his way, especially in that second half. Dallas gets 3 sacks in the first half, 3 sacks in the second half. They looked like the hot boys. Like I said, 6 different guys register stacks. That is what's up. What I really liked, though, is Dallas was exotic with its blitzes. It recognized, hey, the upfront defensive line isn't getting to the quarterback as often as we would like. And this is a very inexperienced offensive line. How about we just change things up, not give them such a standard view? How about we throw like a slot blitz in or something like that? And then you see whether it's... Damian Wilson has the strip sack fumble, but they had other times where they sent in Kayvon Frazier and guys like that, and it just wreaked havoc with the Giants. That's why Eli was so freaked out, because he was like, man, my guys can't protect me to save their life. If I'm back here 2 seconds, I'm on my back. So, crazy game from the Dallas defense in that regard here. Let's see. We lead the league in sacks right now. Yes, we do. Dallas has 9 total sacks. They lead the league in that category. Or is it 9? Let's see. They had 6 last night. I think they had 3 against Carolina. So, yes, 9 sacks. And the thing is, man, I expect that trend to continue, because here's the thing, and this is what I wrote about today. I talked more about the defense than the offense because while the offense does have a lot to dig into, I'm going to get into that in another piece later in the week. But for now, I focused on more of the positive because, after a win, people tend to feel more positive. They want to hear about the good things that are going on. And through 2 weeks, I'm really impressed with what I see out of this defense. It kind of reaffirms what my belief was for them coming out of training camp and out of the preseason. They're going to have... Now, Randy Gregory, we've heard nothing new with regard to developments related to his relapse. That tells me, C-Money, no, Tyron did not give up a sack. He gave up no pressures, and neither did Connor Williams, by the way. Connor Williams bounced back very, very well after a rough game in Carolina. So we've heard nothing new about Randy Gregory related to his relapse. As such, I got to think that he's going to be available next week against Seattle, assuming he clears concussion protocol. That's why he missed this game. So you're going to get Randy Gregory back, a phenomenal talent. I know some people are going nuts because they hear Big Game James, Voch Lombardi, myself, Law Nation, all of us hyping up Randy Gregory, but it's because we've seen enough of his tape and everything to know from a physical tool standpoint what the hell he can do and what he can bring. And if he can just stay on the field, he will go insane on this line. So Randy Gregory coming back presumably as early as this week. David Irving now has 2 games left of his suspension, but he's already back at the facility working out. You're going to have Xavier Woods, your starting safety, back. Now, I think he'll be back for Seattle. I was a little surprised he missed this game, but I think he'll be back for Seattle. And then you got Dayton Jones as well, another guy who, he suffered a knee injury in training camp, but he was showing out pretty well in training camp before that knee injury. I view him as obviously kind of the lesser mention of the overall 4 guys I just named. But as good as this defense has looked, giving up an average of 14.5 points, and really you could say, the last 3 of that game especially was just because of a special teams botch. It already put the Giants at midfield essentially and made it easy for them to get another 3 easy points. But aside from one coverage break that happened at the end of the game, you get the Evan Ingram touchdown. I think that's on Jalen Smith for missing that coverage, but it's either Jalen or it's Jeff Heath. He goes just right between the 2 of them, and they connect for an easy touchdown that gets New York from 3 points to 10. And then you have Jarwin botch the hell out of the onside recover, and that leads to another 3 points for the Giants. So really, I know the final was 20-13, but this game felt like what it looked like on the scoreboard, and that is to say a 20-3 whooping. Now, if you're wondering about the offense, I'll get into that a little bit. We all saw how the game opened up. 3rd snap of the game, Dak goes deep, 64 yards to Tavon Austin. It's like the heavens opened up and our prayers were answered. Dallas threw the ball down the field. Dak looked decisive. He looked like he read the defense well. Beautiful play, and Tavon Austin, that's exactly what they got him for. Just to be able to, he beats the jam, the Janoris Jenkins jam, and then he turns on the burners and he's gone. That is exactly why you go and get a guy like Tavon Austin. And Tavon Austin for the game has, I think, 3 touches for 96 yards. They had an end around too, a reverse with him and Zeke, where he got another 17 rushing. So Tavon had himself a game. The unfortunate part about the offense is everything that happened between. Now, the second drive of the game, they were still very good. They moved the ball down the field. They got to about I think they got just into the red zone because they end up settling for a 37-yard Brett Maher field goal to go up 10-zip. But before the drive kind of fell apart there, we saw a lot of good with Dak in the RPOs. They looked like designed runs. I know they were RPOs, but it looked like the intention from the start was for Dak to roll out. And Dak goes, I think, for a career-high 46 rush yards. That's a perfect usage of Dak Prescott. The only thing that would have made that better, I think, would have been if he had actually slid at the end of some of those. Because there were a couple times where I saw the hits he took, and I was kind of like, oh, God, Cooper Rush is our backup. Please, no. But there's a lot to like. I think there's a lot to like in that regard. The first 2 drives look good for Dallas, and then it's all defense for a while. Defense even hands Dallas an easy easy opportunity there, giving him the ball inside the New York 25, or inside the 30 at least. And Dallas can only get another 27-yard Brett Maher field goal out of that. And that was disappointing to me. You have Dak miss, frankly, an inexcusable miss there. He misses Rico Gathers, who ran a great route. I know we've given some crap to Rico Gathers for his route running and not being a good route runner. But wow, man, he put a move in the end zone, and he was wide open. Dak just missed him, just sailed the ball over. And even Dak had those plays even throughout the middle of the game as well, where he took 2 straight deep shots down the field. I think one was for Deontay Thompson and the other was for Michael Gallup. And I can't remember which one in particular. It was back-to-back throws, 2nd down and 3rd down. But one of them should have led him inside better. Both end up going just out of bounds, led him too close to the sideline, and there's really no play to be made. So there's still room to improve for Dak in that regard. I'm not trying to say Dak had a perfect game. Obviously, he throws for 160 yards, only 96 of which come after that first strike to Tavon Austin. 15 completions for 96 yards was the middle of the game. Not the middle of the game. Take out that first 64-yarder to Tavon Austin and obviously the touchdown. The rest of the game, he goes 15 completions for 96 yards. How different would we feel about that? Like 160 already doesn't pop out at you as like, wow, he was slinging it. But what I like about it, the play calling was much more to his strength. They got him out of the pocket, rolling out, using his legs, and they did a much better job, I felt, calling plays this week. They knew kind of what New York wanted to do. Now, part of that is from the familiarity standpoint, but it felt like they had a legitimately good game plan, and they executed it. And they executed it letting Dak be Dak, as opposed to trying to make him a pocket passer, which he is not. And I don't think he ever will be that. Let me hit on some of these comments here. You guys are flying by in this. Damian Wilson did have a stellar game. Not just the sack and forced fumble, but he had a really, really good game. I thought he had a very good bounce back from week 1, which I thought he was pretty pedestrian. Brendan T, what's up? I love the play where Jalen Smith was down the field, 45 yards covering Odell. That is incredible. Yeah, Jalen, man, he had a much better game too. Jalen only had 4 tackles the first game of the season against Carolina. He looked much better to me this week. And I think part of that might just be, he still had to go against Saquon, and there were a couple times where he just failed to bring down Saquon. But Saquon's a rare breed of athlete, and I feel like on the whole, Jalen still had a very good game, and I was very encouraged by what I saw from that. No one could tackle Saquon on first contact. You were absolutely correct, C-Money. No one could, and they're going to have to figure that out in the future, because if he gets a good offensive line ever, that's going to be a problem for Dallas, or anybody, frankly. But thankfully, the Giants have one of the worst offensive lines in the league, and that makes it at least manageable in the meantime. Imagine if Woods, Irving, and Dayton would have been healthy too. Imagine if Randy Gregory would have been out there. I mean, that's the thing. As good as this defense is, now the one thing they haven't done a lot of, they have forced 2 turnovers in 2 weeks, both of which have been a strip sack. No, that's not correct. It was a fumble on Christian McCaffrey week 1. This time was a strip sack. 2 fumbles. We don't have any picks yet. That is one thing that's a little concerning to me, is that they're not creating a lot of turnovers. They are showing some better fundamentals in that regard, but I want to see more improvement there. And I frankly, they had 16 missed tackles in week 1. I don't know what the number was from week 2, but they need to improve. That's another area. Missed tackles, and I'd like to see some of the secondary get their hands on the balls a little better. That sounds too sexual when I put it in that regard, but that's what I would like to see from them, is to actually get a chance to bring in some interceptions. Can we talk about the O-line? Asks Charles Edwards. Yes, we can. The O-line was much better for Dallas this week. As I mentioned before, Tyron Smith and Connor Williams, neither guy allowed a single pressure in this game, and that was a huge removal from last week. Connor Williams last week gave up 2 sacks, 2 tackles for loss, and 4 quarterback hits. Obviously, that last fatal drive that ends up with Dak getting sacked and fumbling to end the game Right before that happens, you have 2 plays in a row where Quan Short just goes right through Connor Williams and blows up the play. So very, very encouraging to see Connor Williams bounce back this week. Tyron looked a little bit better as well. Last week he has 2 costly penalties. This week he avoids that. I will say Dallas has a little bit of a tendency to self-destruct. Now, one of these 2 penalties, there was one moment in the game where Dallas had it was a 3rd and 9. No, I think it was like a 3rd and 4, something like that. So 3rd and 3. Dallas throws and converts, and it's overturned by a penalty. And it was a hold they called on La'el Collins. Back him up 10 yards, replay down. Convert again. This time they call a penalty, a hold on Jeff Swaim, and it overturns another first down conversion. That was full self-destruct on the drive by the Dallas offense there, and that's still concerning. I still see a little bit of sloppiness in that regard. Now, considering how little they played in the preseason as far as an offensive unit, maybe that's partly to blame, but it's one of those things they're going to have to work on as well. I like the improvement I saw out of the offensive line, but I still want to see more out of the tight ends. Honestly, people want to talk about the wide receivers, and yes, the wide receivers are, it is a lesser crop of wide receivers we've seen thus far from what we saw last year, even with all the drama around Dez. But it's still one of those things where the tight ends are even worse off. Like, if we want to talk about the receivers, I think in 2 games, Allen Hurns has 2 catches for 29 yards. That's not at all the free agent you thought you were acquiring. And Michael Gallup, I think, has between 2 games 1 catch for 5 yards. I know he had 1 for 5 in this game. I don't recall if he had 1 in Carolina off the top of my head. But it's things like that Dallas still needs to shore up, and that's why they are likely re-signing Bryce Butler to a deal, because he's the one big receiver deep threat Dak has ever had any kind of rapport with. And I know everyone wanted Dallas to go get Josh Gordon, but I'm still not convinced Josh Gordon's not going to face some kind of league discipline. And as such, I think Dallas has enough drama in that regard to worry about. So Bryce Butler might be the secure option, even though Josh Gordon is a high risk, high reward that would pay off to much greater dividends if you're able to play him. Dallas just doesn't like trading draft picks for nothing, it looks like. Love our defense, says Kenneth Haynes. What's up, Kenneth? Ninja Nuts. They did adequate, no sacks, but they didn't win the line of scrimmage. What are you referring to there, Ninja Nuts? They had 6 sacks. Oh, you're talking about the Dallas offensive line. Gotcha. Yes, no sacks given up by the Dallas offensive line. I would say their run blocking does need improvement. That's a good point. Zeke goes, I think, 17 carries for 78 yards in this game. It's only the 4th time in his career he's been held under 80 yards at least. And all 4 of those instances have, interestingly enough, come in the first 2 weeks of the season now. So hopefully that's going to turn around, and you're going to start seeing, like next week at Seattle, a game where Zeke can go something like 24 carries for 127 yards or 117, something like that. Something more we're used to seeing. But in the meantime, Dak's got to show he can actually win with the pass. He's got to take some of that pressure off of Zeke, make it where the line can't always stack the box so much. For the most part, I thought Dak looked more decisive out there, but the Dallas offense still struggled through the second and third quarter to really move the ball. So that'll be a challenge for Dallas for sure. Growing pains, man. They got to get used to one another. Agreed. Absolutely, Ninja Nuts. Undisciplined play from Tyron, and is Collins okay at right tackle, but better suited for guard? La'el Collins, man, we're in year 2 now of him at right tackle. I'm going to be honest with you. I still think he should be a guard. I really do. They're not going to move him back. They've made that clear. But some of these penalties I see him getting through the first couple weeks, I just keep shaking my head, and I'm thinking he's better suited to be a guard. He is an absolute mauler of a guard, but I don't know then, like, what would you do? Are you going to try and then convert Connor Williams to right tackle instead? I mean, maybe he could do it, but he's not ready yet. I mean, if you're worried about his size and strength inside, you're going to worry even more about that if he's at right tackle. So they're going to have to figure out what to do in that regard. But for the meantime, I think they're stuck where they are with Lyle Collins at right tackle, and they're just going to have to hope that he gets better as the season wears on and in year 2 of him at that position. O-line not getting enough push off the line. Too many penalties. I agree, Charles. Kia LeKay, Jeff Heath, what's up? People want to say Dak only threw for 160 and that's not going to get it done, forgetting we had 40 yards called back because of holding calls. That's a good point. We did. Dak, like I said, Dak made a couple throws that converted for first downs and they got erased by penalties. And that takes away from it. So that's definitely something to look at there. And he only had a couple throws in this game that I thought weren't good throws. Like against Carolina, I mapped out like 4 or 5 throws I thought were abysmal, like terrible throws. This week, I only saw 1 or 2 where I was like, oh, you got to hit that. One of which was the Rico Gathers coming open in the end zone to the corner. That was, to me, the worst one he missed. You could point out the one I mentioned before where you got 2 straight plays of, I think it's Deontay Thompson and then Michael Gallup going deep ball down the sideline, and he just leads the ball too far out of bounds as opposed to throwing back into the middle of the field, kind of a back shoulder sort of thing where the leverage is for the receiver. But on those, man, those to me aren't as egregious because that's something that's not Dak's strength anyway. We've seen Dak hit that play to like Rico in the corner. We've seen him be accurate in that range, so that's where he really has to connect. That's where I give him less leeway, I guess is what I'm saying. Heard Hearns might be the odd man out if we sign Butler. I would be surprised if that's the case, Stevie, but it could happen because, like I said, Hearns has been forgettable through 2 weeks here. He's got a 1-year deal, and I think he's only on the hook for or was it a 2-year deal? I can't remember off the top of my head. It's either a 1 or 2-year deal, but total money, we're talking $4 million. If it was Terrence Williams who was the odd man out, Terrence Williams is $7.5 million to cut, $4 million to play this year. Next year, that's not the case. So Terrence Williams' contract alone might buy him 1 last year in Dallas. But from a snaps perspective, should be Terrence Williams because Terrence Williams got 11 snaps last game, and Hearns got, I want to say 28. Still not great, but more than Williams got, more than T. Will for sure. I think Seattle has Hunley from the Packers as their backup now. Yes, they do. I'm not watching the game right now, so did Russell Wilson get knocked out of the game injured? Paul Alexander is equal to Frank Polak. I like that, J Pharma D. Let's see here. Comments rolling away from me a little bit again. The Pats signed Gordon already anyway. Did they sign him to a new deal? I think they just traded for him. It was like a conditional 5th-round pick where if he doesn't play at least 10 games, Cleveland sends back a late-round pick to New England. And that, by the way, I would say that is a very agreeable price. I understand why Dallas might have been reluctant, but I did hear that Dallas was one of the favorites late to land him, that it was between New England and Dallas, kind of. Even though Dallas claimed they weren't interested, it seems like the national guys are saying they were, in fact, at least somewhat involved in the discussions. Yeah, man, if Seattle is like this all year, Wilson was going to want out. I'd trade a crap load of guys to make him a Cowboy. I can't envision Russell Wilson leaving Seattle, at least now. If they have a couple years of this, maybe. But I feel like that guy is wired to be able to stay with it longer than 1 year of really bad. But yes, Russell Wilson would definitely be worth going to acquire if he were available. Josh Gordon in New England says, D-Town Tex G. Yes, sir. Seattle's defense is stopping Howard. They are. Seattle is still serviceable on the defensive end. The problem is their offense. You got, Brandon Marshall out there. He'll get catches, but he's kind of like a Jason Witten in that regard. He's not going to beat you deep. He's just going to get all the kind of intermediate stuff. And there's not really anyone else on that offense you fear. And that offensive line in the first half gave up 5 sacks to Chicago. Granted, Chicago is a very good defense. I think Dallas, in terms of a defensive front 7, has a similar quality to it, especially once it gets back some of these reserves in the next few weeks. So we'll see. Next week could be a very interesting game. We could feel very differently. I know a lot of people feel differently about Dallas today than they felt just Thursday. But man, if Seattle comes out for next week's game looking anything like they do today, we could feel very different about Dallas, because Dallas might, don't want to jinx it, but Dallas might be able to slap them around a little bit, and that'd be really nice to see. There were parts of this game against New York that were reminiscent of the 2016 Cowboys, particularly that last drive where they go something like 17 plays for over 8 minutes of clock and chew up all the clock in the fourth quarter, and then you end with the Zeke touchdown where he just won't be brought down inside the 5. That is where Dallas made its money in 2016, and that's the only drive like that we've seen this year. Even the one 8-point drive they got in Carolina was more of a hurry up kind of move the ball. It wasn't a patient just grinding and beat you down drive like we saw so much in the past. My Cowboys family, what's up? Linehan used Dak's strength finally, like in 2016. Couldn't agree more. As much crap as I in particular gave Scott Linehan for his play calling against Carolina, and I know it wasn't all Scott Linehan, Dak had a wretched game, and the offensive line had a wretched game. But as bad as I thought the play calling was in week 1, I thought it was fantastic in week 2. I thought this was exactly the style of play calling that they need to get the best out of Dak Prescott possible, because you can't be over conservative with Dak Prescott and try and make him something he's not. You just can't. You're not going to get a productive quarterback if you do that. And whether they just needed the Carolina thing to finally drive that point home or what, I don't know. But if they can just use him like they did yesterday, but also when he gets out of the pocket and goes downfield, just slide a little bit. Just not take those hits for whether... I get it. Sometimes we're talking about a cornerback, but just don't take those unnecessary hits from cornerbacks and linebackers that you don't have to. I know you're a big dude, but just protect yourself a little bit. It's week 2. We got a long way to go, man. Fleming at right tackle. Yeah, that would be interesting, J Pharma D. I agree. I would very much be curious to see that. I don't know if they're willing to do that yet. I do think, let's see, so if we made that adjustment, what would we be looking at? If Fleming is your right tackle and Collins is your guard, so what are we doing with Connor Williams in that scenario? Because Connor Williams, you needed to play him to develop him. So that'd be one thing I'd be curious to see, because you're bringing in one new guy. You got to sit someone. 45 rushing yards from Dak, don't forget. Yes, I think 45, 46 rushing yards. Dak's highest, that's his career high for rushing yards in a game. That was perfect use. Those were clearly a lot of them designed runs. I know they were all out of an RPO set, but they looked like they were designed runs to keep the defense on its heels. I thought that was very well done. That's how you got to use Dak. You have to be willing to use him that way at least a little bit. The difference between that and what we saw in Carolina was that was Dak running for his life. That was him being indecisive and then going just, I got to run, and trying to make something out of nothing, and there was just nothing to be had. This was decisive. That is the key word I could point to for Dallas yesterday as opposed to week 1, is they were decisive. Not everything worked, whether it was offensively or defensively, but they were decisive in how they attacked. They were aggressive and decisive. Linehan used Tavon properly, finally. Yes, Tavon Austin, 3 touches, 96 yards, and a touchdown. 64 yards on the first pop, 17 on an end around from Zeke. And then there was another deep catch then there as well. I was actually getting annoyed through that second and third quarter where the offense just completely shut down, because I was sitting here like, why aren't we playing Tavon more? I think he also only had like 28 snaps in the game. And I was sitting here like, why aren't we using him? He already proved he's instant offense in this game. Why are we going away from him? So, thankfully, they came back to him and he got a little more production, but keep on the lookout for him. He looks like he could be the Swiss Army knife after all that they coveted, that they traded for, and that, frankly, they need if this offense is going to work. 2-year deal, says my Cowboys family, regarding on Allen Hurns. Thank you for that info, sir. Abraham Young, I think we have a chance against the Seahawks. They are already losing versus Chicago. Yeah, I think so. I think that's absolutely a chance. As I've seen them in these first 2 weeks, it kind of confirms what I thought coming into the season, which is to say they are not the Seattle team of the past we are used to. And I don't want to kick up anything too much, but I got a weird gut feeling that says after week 3 when Dallas plays Seattle, we're going to revisit those Earl Thomas topics and see about that deal. My gut tells me we make a swing for Earl Thomas, but it depends on what the offense can do in the meantime. If the offense can kind of right itself a little bit, become a little more balanced and not so feast or famine, then maybe, just maybe, Dallas goes ahead and swings for getting Earl a year early, presumably, and making this defense like absurdly good elite. Doesn't matter what he counts, production is what matters. I agree. 2-year deal, but not a lot of money for Hearns. Rather cut T-Will. We already know what he can do, mainly block and have one good catch once in a blue moon. I agree, Stevie Mac. If Dallas has a ton of cap money opening up next year, so even if we are paying a little bit of a price, we got money right now. Even if we're having to pay a little bit higher of a price to cut T-Will than to keep him, at this point, if I got an odd man out, I'm much more so in favor of signing Bryce Butler and dropping T-Will if I'm making a change to this receiving core, because I haven't seen enough from Allen Hearns to be able to write off what he is or isn't. I've seen enough of T-Will to get an idea of what he is. Now, you could say the same thing, I guess, to Bryce Butler, but I see more in recent years deep ball threat for Butler than I do for Williams. Baldwin is hurt. Can we stop dumping the ball off to Zeke when we're in third and super long situations? It bothers me. He's taking so many unnecessary hits. I agree with that absolutely. This was one of the things that I was kind of screaming about regarding the offense. As much as I liked the play calling last night, I was frustrated that we still won't get Zeke properly involved in the play calling, like as far as passing the ball. Like, you look at what New York did with Saquon Barkley. Saquon, now, yeah, he made the first guy miss a lot, but the dude had 14 catches, and it's not like they were dumping it to him in the flat with his back turned at or behind the line of scrimmage and him having no head of momentum or steam or anything going for him. Like, the way Dallas has been dumping the ball down to Zeke through 2 weeks, it literally gives him no chance. I don't care who he is. I don't care if he's Adrian Peterson in his absolute prime. He's not going to get a lot out of those plays. And for it to be 3rd and 23 and you're going to do a screen down there to Zeke or a dump off to Zeke 4 yards behind the line of scrimmage, that's not going to go anywhere, man. Like, that is so easy to sniff out. It's insane. What do you think about Butler coming back to the Cowboys? I answered that. I agree, D-Town. Cowboy Crunk was friggin' pissed last night when they kept calling that play on 3rd and long. I don't think the play calling was as much of a factor as the execution and personnel alignments. Interesting. I like that. I like that idea for sure, Jay. Connor Williams equals tight end or jumbo packages. Yeah, okay. Interesting. I think Williams has a bright future, but he's got to get a little more size to him for sure. They should have snuck in Olawale a few times. So many sneaky plays where you can run with him, but Linehan won't use that to our advantage. I did see one time where I think they sent him. Now, I haven't seen the All-22, but I think I recall seeing him one time lined up outside, and I thought that was going to be something because he was a tight end in college. And, 2 years ago, I think it was, he had a 75-yard touchdown catch for the Oakland Raiders. So I got really excited when I heard he was lined up out wide, but then nothing really came of it. So we'll see. Hopefully they can make something happen with that at some point this season. I do think he's an underrated, not weapon, but definitely a trick in the bag to have kind of up your sleeve. Do you have a bag up your sleeve? I'm mixing metaphors again. Not metaphors, analogies. See, I can't even get that right. This wide receiver by committee is frustrating to see. Yeah, I agree. They don't really have anyone that they love. Maybe Cole Beasley. But other than that, it's just a lot of guys they seem to like. Like, they feel relatively confident in each guy, but not wholly reliant on any one guy. And you still got to have your go-to guy. And the closest I can think to that right now in terms of practice and rapport from training camp would be like Michael Gallup, but through 2 games, we haven't seen much of anything out of Michael Gallup. And this is what I was saying, that I thought Michael Gallup will be a pretty special receiver. Not saying he's going to be a Pro Bowler or anything like that, but I think he'll be a very good receiver for Dallas. But you got to wait as we get to the middle to latter parts of the season for that to really emerge, was my feeling. They're not cutting T. Will for Bryce. Won't happen. Might not. We'll see. I mean, they got the money that they could afford to do it, and T. Will is getting very few snaps the last couple games. They probably won't cut a receiver. They'll have to keep 7 wide receivers. If they don't cut a receiver, I wonder what move they would be willing to make to sign Butler and keep T. Will. Obviously, you're not going to put Frederick. They've made it clear, I should say. They're not going to put Frederick on IR, even the 8-week IR, even though that would open up a spot. Schultz probably needs practice squad, the tight end, but they don't want to admit that because he's a 4th-round pick. So I don't know what they're going to do in that regard, but that would probably be a good fit for them as far as who to make the odd man out. He hasn't even dressed out yet anyway. So maybe that would be a fit to cut him, let him pass waivers, and then stash him on practice squad. But we'll see what they do. Rico is better than Jarwin, says Marcelo B. I agree, man. Rico had a couple times where he was open and ready to do something. One time was a jump ball that didn't quite connect, and the other time Dak flat out missed him, and that was pitiful. That was one of the few times in my notebook I wrote down, wow, Dak really missed an opportunity there. So they're going to have to figure out what to do on that. But I don't know. I would definitely take Rico Gathers over Blake Jarwin right now. I think Blake Jarwin is a 2nd or 3rd tight end, which now the fact that he's playing like, I guess he's still technically the 2nd, but because we don't really have a true number 1, he's getting more snaps than he should. He's seeing the field more than he should, and him being out on the hands team for that onside kick kind of revealed quickly why that might not be a good fit. We should put Zeke in the slot with Rod in the backfield. Like I said, man, I've wrote about this all the way back in, I want to say it was March of this past year. No, it was after last season ended, so it was March of this year. I wrote about Zeke and how they need to use him a little bit more, not apples to apples, but use him more in the passing game, kind of like how Pittsburgh uses Le'Veon Bell, or rather that they did use Le'Veon Bell in the passing game. Don't have to do it exactly the same, but just get him more involved. Zeke is dynamic enough he can make some stuff happen. You see just what Saquon Barkley was able to do. He had 80 yards in the game receiving, even though it was only 5.7 on average. He had, 11 carries for 28 yards outside of that? Like, there is production to be had there. Zeke has 2 touchdown catches of 70-plus yards in his career. A 70-yarder at, San Francisco, and an 83-yarder at Pittsburgh. So you have that option. If you get him in space in the open field and get him the ball, let alone with any blockers, he can make things happen. And they just don't seem to be that interested. Or if it's a trick they're hiding up their sleeve, they're keeping it buried deep in that sleeve for a special damn occasion. But I do really want to see it happen. I've been screaming for it. I was screaming for it all of last season too when he was in the game. And I wrote the piece finally at the end of the season because I was just so frustrated because I was like, I see everything from him that says he can do this. I don't understand why they refuse to do this. So we'll see if they can turn that around. But man, I'm right there with you. I think we saw him even in training camp do that a couple times, line up in the slot. And I think in those cases they were putting Tavon in the backfield. But we've seen he can do it. You gotta work with it, man. Pick 6 Chicago. Oh, good. They're my fantasy football defense. that helps me. Out of respect to you guys, I'm gonna avoid looking at that. Although I will reference a couple stats I got here. Cowboys offense entering the 4th quarter yesterday. Their first 2 possessions totaled 139 yards. The next 6, 79 yards. Now that included a kneel down at halftime. So that's something to reference there. The 6 sacks by the Cowboys were their most versus the Giants since week 15 of 2008, when I think that was 8 sacks they got in that game, and I want to say it was like 6.5 of those sacks came between DeMarcus Ware and Greg Ellis. Oh, yeah. Look at that. Reference my notes, and I do get it right. Yeah. Oh, man. Let's see here. The security touchdown for Dallas that puts them up 20-3 was a 14-play, 82-yard drive that chewed up 8:23 of the game. That's very much so like the 2016 formula. Silly move not to put Frederick on IR. I agree. Schultz is just a rookie. T. Will has given us anything but inconsistency in his career. I agree. My exact thinking on Schultz DDP. Yeah, someone agrees with me. GBS is a serious disorder. Takes a while to get back strength and sensation to normal. I agree. That's all the more reason why they should put him on IR. If they get him back at all this year, I consider it a bonus. That's the honest truth. I think not putting him on IR is a waste of a roster spot, and they did the same thing in 2015 with Tony Romo. I want to see the secondary get a pick 6. I absolutely do as well. I think they got the athletes to do it. They just gotta do it. We haven't seen a pick yet from this defense, and that's the only thing that I'm a little frustrated with. What's up, Brett? It's the only thing I'm a little frustrated with so far from this defense, that we have not seen this. We have not seen any interceptions. Of course, pick 6, that's a different animal, but I think they got the athletes that they can do it. They just gotta make some things happen. Something else interesting to me in the play calling side of things, or not play calling, in the snaps, the personnel department, we're still not seeing anything from Jordan Lewis. And I don't mean not seeing anything as in he's not doing anything. I mean, we're not seeing anything as in he's not on the damn field to do anything. That's the one thing. As much as I love everything I see from what Chris Richard's bringing to this team, he's clearly favoring Anthony Brown over Jordan Lewis, and it's because Brown, more so than Jordan, fits his mold of long, rangy cornerbacks who can make some plays. But Anthony Brown also doesn't have anywhere near the technical savvy of Jordan Lewis. And I feel like Jordan Lewis is a dog, man. I feel like that's like a guy who can be like a leader of your defense. Not the leader, but a leader. And I'm frustrated with their refusal to utilize him more so in the game. I think he had 1 snap in this game, and I want to say against Carolina it was probably about the same, 1 snap. I mean, he might be trade bait in the future, but I'm frustrated in that regard for him, and because I think, as I'm sitting here talking about I want us to get interceptions, I feel like he can do it, man. I feel like he can. I don't know why he's not at least our nickel corner. So I don't know what's going on there. Jay Farmady, if you know something, if someone else in the comments knows something as to why that might be, beyond just him not being the prototypical mold of a Chris Richard cornerback, defensive back, whatever, let me know. Chicago's defense is not playing the radio. No, don't cut Schultz. If anything, cut Jarwin. Yeah, Schultz hasn't been out there, but he has many similarities to Witten. Here's the thing, Stevie. If you do cut Schultz, he's shown nothing yet. No one's going to drop a roster spot for him. If you cut Schultz, he'll get to your practice squad. Now, your point about cutting Jarwin instead, long-term, I think that makes a lot of sense. But right now, the fact that Dallas is dressing out Jarwin and not Schultz, in fact, Jarwin's their second tight end, not even their third like Rico, that kind of suggests that they weight them a little bit differently. So I'm talking about dropping your 4th tight end, knowing he'll come back to you for practice squad, or very, very likely come back to you for practice squad, in favor of another deep threat wide receiver. Seattle needs to stop with the fake play action. Doesn't fool Chicago. Yep. Golden Heart City 2. Zeke in motion. Jet sweep action. Smith at halfback. I would welcome it. It'd be different for sure. If you line them out there, then you bring them on the jet sweep. That would actually be a pretty... I mean, it's still a carry, but it's a unique way. At least it's a different look. I'd be open to seeing that. Golden City, or Golden Heart City 2. Cowboy Crunk. Hola, Cowboy family. What's up? Actually, he's saying holla because he got 2 L's in there, and I see that now. Ninja Nuts. My niece had GBS, and it took her 3 years to walk normal again. Wow. Man, that's some serious stuff, man. I'm glad that she sounds like she's recovered for sure. That's a hard thing to have to deal with, man. For the Cowboys, they're gonna have to figure out what with Travis Frederick they're gonna do. Like I said, if you get him this year at all, it's a bonus. But here's the thing, man. Joe Looney's been playing like a stud. Joe Looney hasn't given up a pressure yet, other than maybe 1 or 2 missed assignments as far as calls at the line in Carolina. I don't think he's really had a mistake yet. It's been at least on the surface level through 2 weeks, a fairly negligible drop-off from Travis Frederick to him. Now, by no means am I saying, who needs Travis Frederick in his big contract? Just keep Joe Looney. No, not saying that at all. Joe Looney has a lot of value to Dallas as an interior lineman that they can use, and the fact is he's just having to play center right now because of circumstance. But he's doing very well. I'm very impressed with what I see from Joe Looney so far. Don't know what we discussed, but I was excited to see Rico in for 2 plays. Yeah, I was too. And the thing is, he should have. I think Dak missed him, guaranteed missed him once. The other time, a little more debatable just because of the pressure. But I think Dallas, he could have had 2 catches and a touchdown, and he absolutely should have had that touchdown. Dak just flat out missed the throw, and that's pretty unforgivable. But we'll see. We'll see. I like that he got out there. I like what he can bring to the table. And it's something, frankly, no other tight end on this team can bring right now. Ellie played a great game, surprisingly. We should have... Ellie? We should have had a pick, but Ellie was... Eli. Eli, yes. Eli was accurate and composed while getting his ass chased all over. Yeah, Eli Manning got sacked 6 times, 3 times in each half, and it was by 6 different Cowboys. That's the thing I loved. Yes, I was wrong. I said David Irving would have 2.5 sacks. He got 1, so somewhere there's figurative crow I'm supposed to eat. But that's not going to be an option because what am I saying? They didn't get any more sacks, but they did get a lot of pressure, and they brought it in exotic ways. They showed slot blitz. You saw Damian Wilson getting there. You saw Kayvon Frazier getting there. I mean, just very, very creative with how they brought pressure, and I loved it. Let me think. Can I run through the guys who got it? D-Law got 1. Wilson got 1. Taco got 1. Kayvon got 1. Tyrone Crawford got 1. Ooh, there's one more. There's one more. Who can think of it? Anton Woods? Did Anton Woods get 1? Maybe? Let me know in the comments. I'm trying to remember. I got 5 of the 6. I know that. He got back right up after Jalen took his head off, too. That was a clean hit by Jalen, too, by the way. That was a beautiful, beautiful clean hit. I was happy about that for sure. That was perfect execution. When I saw it setting up, I was worried, like, oh, man, are they going to protect Eli here in the sense of throwing a flag on Jalen if he does anything to hit him hard? But it was a clean hit, and they didn't call it. I was happy about that. That's how you lay the wood and do it within the confines of the rules. We were just talking about your favorite 3rd and long bubble play to Zeke. Yeah, they should have gotten Eli for a pick. I was surprised they didn't. Xavier Giles, Cowboys defense looks good. That they do. They look like one of the better defenses in the league. And, they had one busted play that gave up a touchdown pass, a wide open touchdown pass to Evan Ingram. But aside from that, man, I mean, I almost don't even count the final field goal against them just because special teams botched that. Really, they held the Giants to 3 points. That's impressive. You held Carolina to 16, unfortunately in a loss. That's not your fault. And you held New York to 3. So overall, though, the points being what they are, Dallas is giving up 14.5 points per game. If they're led by their defense, and yes, Anton Woods. Love when I get these little facts right. If they're led by their defense and they're then built around the run offensively, and Dak can give them just enough with his arm and his legs to get them somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 to 23 points. Right now, it's really early. But through 2 games, it looks like that's how they're going to have to win right now. I think that they will get better. I think they will have more need and necessity to draft offensive side of the ball in this upcoming draft. You know, get a receiver, maybe. I don't know if you look at tight end yet, but maybe you consider it. But you take a look at those things and you worry about that then. For now, it's a complete role reversal from what we've seen the last 5, 6, 7, whatever years. This team is built around its defense now. It's a defense and run the ball team with a guy who can make some dynamic plays at quarterback. Let's see. Yes, as you notice, we did not run near that much against the Giants. Yeah, Zeke had 17 carries. Zeke's carries through the first 2 weeks, I want to say it's like 17 and 15. So way down on those regards. Now, part of the Carolina one was they were so ineffective running the ball and their play calling wasn't very good. But this week, I think it was more about keeping them off balance. And they still need to get those numbers up. But I'm not as upset this week. And not just because of the result, because of the flow of the game. It felt a little more forgivable this week because overall, it looked like they at least had a good idea of what they were doing and like they had a generally good strategy for the game. Game plan. That's the word I was looking for, not strategy. We had 12 bubble screens to receivers against Carolina. It felt like a lot, man. Seahawks season slipping away. Time to trade a safety. I agree, man. That's why I say. Hear me now. Quote me later. After Dallas at Seattle this next week, we're going to hear like red hot rumors once again about Earl Thomas to Dallas because I think it was legit because it will be Seattle's first game. Their home opener is Dallas week 3. They didn't want to see once we got past the draft and we were talking in training camp. They're like, we don't want to open the season with Earl Thomas in the other locker room. That's just weird. And so I think we might see it revisited. And there's some precedence for that, by the way. Last season, when the Seahawks and the Houston Texans with Deshaun Watson had that crazy shootout, and it was like a 41-38 win for Seattle, you had a lineman who was holding out, I think, for Houston, come back and play that game for Houston. And then literally the same day of the game, like late in the night, he was traded to Seattle. There's some weird precedent for that. Why they insisted on seeing him for at least one game before then, I don't know. But there's some precedent for that once you get past actually playing them, maybe they're interested in then pulling a deal then. Thoughts about signing Butler? I'm for it. That's all there is really to say. I don't know what the situation is. I mean, I know what the situation is, Melvin, regarding Josh Gordon. Obviously, he's now to New England for a conditional 5th-round pick. If he doesn't play at least 10 games, the Browns will send a late-round pick back to New England. But I think there are so many concerns about that dude and his state of mind. I think it's another guy Dallas would have to worry about. You know, say what you want, they have to worry about Randy Gregory, and they didn't want to have to then add another guy like that at receiver. And with Gordon, man, oh my God, it's a guy who has phenomenal talent, but good God, he's missed 2 full seasons in his career because of suspension. So I just don't think it was something Dallas wanted to roll the dice on, really. I know they were in talks, but I don't think that they were spending big for those talks, and that's why, with a conditional 5th, New England won the bidding, even though the Browns had said they didn't want to trade Gordon to the NFC. Or they wanted to trade him to the NFC, excuse me. They did not want to trade him within the AFC. Crawford. Yeah, I had Crawford on my list. That big DT. Anton Woods. Yep, Woods. Joe Thomas. Joe Thomas was not one of the guys that had a sack, although he had a very good game as well. I think he had a tackle for loss, maybe. But yes, I'm very happy with the pickup of Joe Thomas. He looks like he's very solid as well. Now that Bryce Butler is back with the Cowboys, will they make us forget about Dez Bryant, asks Abraham Young. Forget about Dez Bryant? No. Do I think he can give us some more deep threats, and does he have a chemistry with Dak for that? Yeah. I looked at not just the Arizona game last year in, I think, week 3. I don't just look at that. I also look at there were other games too where he's a deep threat. He is. He's also the biggest receiver automatically on Dallas. As soon as he steps into the locker room again, he's the biggest receiver on the roster. And that's another thing that is appealing for Dallas in this case, is it gives them some more size because they are an undersized receiving core right now. I think Seattle, we get 7 sacks. Ooh, 7 sacks. I like that. I like that prediction, Giles. Wilson will be out the next game. Oh, Russell Wilson. Gotcha. Interesting. I love that we were fast-paced to being... Wait. I love that we were fast-paced to being... Then once we took the lead, we took a nice 8-minute drive. Yes. Yeah, I would like more consistency out of the offense in quarters 2 and 3. At halftime, they were up 10-0. It felt like they should have been up something like 17 or 20-0. So that was concerning. But years past where you would have looked at the defense and been like, "Oh God, when's the letdown gonna come?" That wasn't the case. That was not the case in this game. We were looking at the defense, and for the first time in I don't know how long, I was thinking, I think these guys can hold it. I think these guys can hold them down. If they give up any points, I damn sure don't think they give up, double digit. Now, that ended up happening, but at the time, that was how I felt about it. And it more or less came to fruition. Yeah, I mentioned this earlier, but let me reiterate again, just another number that points out how good the Dallas defense was and how bad the New York offense was. I'll hit some of the highlight numbers again. New York held to 255 total yards. 108 of those yards came on their final 2 drives. That included a 20-something yard busted coverage touchdown for Evan Ingram, and after the onside kick that was botched by Blake Jarwin, the recovery that was botched by Blake Jarwin, you had a 17-yard Odell Beckham catch that set up a field goal for them as well. So you had that set up. You had Saquon Barkley get 80 yards receiving on 14 catches, and on 11 carries, 28 yards. So total yardage-wise, he had more yards than Zeke. He had 98 total yards, I believe, as opposed to Zeke getting... Zeke had 78 rushing, and I want to say like another 9 receiving. So, yeah, Zeke about in the neighborhood of 87 compared to 98. But Zeke got the touchdown and the W, so who cares? But... yeah, those are the highlight numbers. Dallas defense gets 6 sacks by 6 different players. Very impressive showing from the defense for sure. I am very encouraged by what I see from them and what I believe they can become even as the season wears on, because they've got some serious reinforcements coming. Yes, 15 and 17. Referring to Brett, your comment. Yes, quarters 2 and 3, they were anemic again as the offense. They were self-destructing and not moving the ball well. But in the fourth quarter, push comes to shove. Dak Prescott goes, I think, 5 for 6 for I think it's only like 29 yards, but he also runs the ball a little bit. And Dallas goes on something like a 16-play drive that eats up 8.5 minutes of the game, and then it results in a touchdown. That's absolutely vintage 2016. Seattle's 2-minute offense looks great, though they'll still lose. That's something we're going to have to watch out for. Seattle is so good in 2 minutes. Serious question coming. When Earl Thomas stated he was thoroughly disrespected, do you think he was saying that some of the disrespect was from the Cowboys for not being more aggressive in making the trade? That's interesting. That is a very interesting question there, Cowboy Crunk. I don't know that it's so much disrespect from Dallas. I mean, maybe you can view it that way, but man, Dallas went up in their offer. The only thing Dallas didn't offer for Earl Thomas was a first rounder. And when we're talking about getting a guy 1 year early, a first rounder is an absurd price. They went all the way up to a 2, which I would say even that's, paying sticker price, so to speak, to get Earl Thomas at age 30 and with 1 year left on his deal. So I don't know if maybe he feels that way. I mean, players aren't always rational in how they view their value, but he absolutely was disrespected by Seattle in that regard. At least, in his mind, that's how he feels, and their actions kind of show it a little bit as well. But I think their refusal to trade him to Dallas, which is where he wanted, I think they would have taken it too from anyone else, honestly. I really do. I think there was a little bit of spite there at the finish line of as much of a show as he made running down the tunnel to talk to Jason Garrett. I think that they did not want to trade him to Dallas for a 2, and maybe they reconsider that after week 3. But for the meantime, they held pat to what they said, and that's that he was not going to be available unless they got a first. So we'll see. That's a good question, though. That's something I hadn't really considered from that angle. I don't know that we teased it along. I think that it was heavily debated and talked about, but Dallas went up in their price ultimately. They went back from a 3 to a 2. They offered Seattle exactly what they wanted late in training camp, and Seattle said, nah. I feel sorry for Wilson. He needs Oakland, Tennessee, Green Bay, or Pittsburgh line. Money will heal that, says Golden Heart City 2. D. Wilson says Seattle has given up 6 sacks 2 games in a row. Woo-hoo! That's what I like to hear. Hey, yes, sir. We tackled well, even though Eli went 33 of 44. We dominated their offense. Not only did he go 33 of 44, he averaged only about 6.2 yards of completion, I want to say, and it was like 287 yards or 279 yards, something like that. We held him under 300 despite that many attempts, and his average per attempt was really low, so also really strong. Plus, he got 1 touchdown off us, but that was a garbage time touchdown, honestly. I think he has a little anger towards us because Khalil Mack went for 2 first-rounders. Khalil Mack is also a much younger player in the prime of his career, whereas a 30-year-old safety, even though he still has a couple of years of very, very high production to him, I believe, is not the same animal as Khalil Mack in his mid-20s. So that's different, I think. But we'll see. I mean, that is a high bar to set. Again, players don't always value or view their own value in a realistic or rational sense. Let's see here. How long have I been going? Ooh, 1 hour and 8 minutes. Okay. Guys, I'll take a couple more questions, but while I'm waiting for those questions to come in, before I wrap up this show, I'm going to go down my rundown here. If you haven't already, check out the website, thedallasprospect.com. My writing is featured on thedallasprospect.com, as well as Dallas Sports Fanatic, where I am their staff writer for the Cowboys and Mavericks. Occasionally, my writing will find its way even onto the Cowboys section of Bleacher Report now, it looks like, which I'm very thrilled about. Additionally, you can find us on Twitter at Dallas Prospect. We are also on Facebook, Instagram, all that, and all those other places. We're just going to be the Dallas Prospect. So check us out in all of those places. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. We're closing in on 1,300 subs. I'm eager to get there, man. It feels like the grind between 12 and 1,300 has been surreal. But now that we're within 10, I really want to get there. So if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, if you want to support the channel, you got a couple different options for that. We have a PayPal me link down in the description. Don't want to hit the mic. Down in the description. We also have the Super Chat active down here, and we have a Patreon account with 3 different pay tiers, $1, $5, and $10. Each tier, you get access to early content. At the $10 tier, my plan is to institute exclusive content eventually. But also at any tier, regardless, you get discounts towards Dallas Prospect merch. I'm about to roll out a whole new merch line as well in that. Brett Bender knows what's up. He's a recent patron for us, and he got a free shirt out of the deal at the $10 level. So check it out. And let's see here. We got any questions that have come in? Khalil Mack dominated the first 2 games. Yes, sir, he has. Our corners are legit. Cheeto and Byron Jones basically shut down Odell Beckham. Yes, sir. Let me reiterate those stats real quick. Odell targeted 9 times, 4 completions, 51 yards. His long completion of 17 came on that very final drive, which was garbage time and meant nothing in that regard. And not only that, Odell Beckham, the average separation he had, this is according to Next Gen Stats, his average separation he had per target was 1.6 yards. Do you know what the league average is in that? 2.76 yards. 2.76, I want to say. So that's called Byron Jones and Cheeto staying in his hip pocket. And I was going to say taking his money, but they didn't get a pick. So let's just say staying in his hip pocket and making life difficult. That is how you shut a dude down. That's how you make life difficult and make the highest paid receiver in the NFL work for his money. So that's what's up. I feel very, very encouraged by what I see from the defense here. But let's see. That's going to wrap up my time here for the show tonight, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Check us out on any of these platforms I mentioned, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. If you want to support the show, there are plenty of ways to do that as well. You can see those links down in the description below. And until next time, guys, just remember, every legend was once a prospect. Salute.